they were like across the street. I'm not paying attention to them, and I could see because like an ATM had like a glass window, so I look in the window, so I see them like approaching me. So I'm like, oh man, this is about to be a shakedown, right? Because I'm at the ATM. So they asked me for my identification. So he's like, what is your job, James? And I'm like, he trying to figure out like what I do, you know. So this way, like he could go high or low.
I don't need no one to save me. I was born to be the greatest. All that time in that basement. All that time.
So Thailand was your favorite country. Do you have a country that was your least favorite, and why?
Yes. So this country has been coming up in a lot of the YouTubers channels like Razor Rays lately. Shout out to Razor Rays. It's Colombia, man. Colombia.
Oh, no!
I'm sorry. Like Kings and Dreams, TMD. You know, those guys that may own some property out there and go out there a lot.
No, TaylorMade is Dominican, Thailand.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Colombia guys, it's myself, Jay Clyde, Andre Love Crossing Borders, Learn Crypto TV, Ulysses the Traveler. You know what I mean? But okay, well, explain why Colombia is your least favorite.
So listen, I went out there with a travel group called Urban Travel, which is owned by a couple of my buddies, and we went to Cartagena, the wall city. So we were at our villa, chilling, you know, smoking hookah, drinking a little bit, and we hear a knock on the door, and it's I think it's the police. The guy said it's the police outside, and I was like, okay, cool. We don't have any drugs in here. Like, we cool. At least I don't have any drugs on me. And they were like, the police ended up being corrupt, right?
Oh boy.
And
so it was a shakedown.
Exactly. So the police were like, hey, if you don't give us X amount of dollars or X amount of what did they use out there? What's the currency? Pesos. If you don't give us X amount of pesos, we're going to search each and every single room in this villa. And if we find any drugs or anything, everybody in here is going to jail. So our guy came back. He was like, hey, I need X amount of money from everybody so we can pay off these cops to leave us alone. And I was like, and at that time I had been to like a dozen countries by then. I'm like, I've never had this happen before. Like, what's going on? Like, these are police. They're supposed to be protecting us. Right. And okay, we paid them off and they left us alone. But I'm like, I had never had that type of experience in my life. Even though that may have just been my singular anecdotal experience, it kind of put a sour taste in my mouth about Colombia, even though I love, you know, the people out there. But that was just my singular experience, and it appears to have gotten a little bit worse out there, according to, you know, Razor Rays and other folks out there reporting. But you know, absolutely. It just depends. You really have to know where you're going, where you're staying, and you have to know some people out there too. That's what I recommend. But yeah,
no, that's true. No, that's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, I've heard that there's like I myself even almost got into a shakedown. So I'll tell, you know, I'll say this story. I'm not sure if a lot of you have heard it, but so what ended up happening is that my girl at the time, we went to this restaurant, and this restaurant, so they only wanted pesos. They only wanted pesos. And I'm like, okay. So the ATM was like really like right next door. So I go to the ATM, and at the time, like everyone had to have their mask on, like even outside. So this day was pretty warm. So like I had pulled my mask down, and so the police officers, like they were like across the street. I'm not paying attention to them. So like, and I could see, because like an ATM, like it had like a glass window. So I look in the window, so I see them like approaching me. So I see them like going across the street, but like I'm like, oh, maybe they're gonna mind their business. So they keep getting closer and closer. So I'm like, oh man, this is about to be a shakedown, right? Because I'm at the ATM. So they, so they asked me for my identification. So I showed them my ID, and so the guy, one of the guys speaks pretty good English. So he's like, okay. So he's like, what is your job, James? And I'm like, he's trying to figure out like what I do, So this way, like he could go high or low, So I'm like, man. So I'm like, I'm a janitor, So I'm a janitor because I'm waiting because if I tell him exactly like what I do, he's gonna try to go for the jugular. Because and so anyway, so he's like, well, that you're not supposed to pull your mask down, right? Like that's a requirement unless you're eating or whatever, right? So thankfully, like the owner of the restaurant, like he could see, so he's like, no, he's just getting some money so that he could pay for his meal. So like, but he had my back. If he wasn't there, it was definitely going to be a shakedown. Because it was 3 of them, and how they did it, like they like surrounded me. So I'm like, oh man,
Yep.
Yeah. So
and they're not cheap, man. They see Americans, they're like, oh, he must be loaded. He must have some money on him. So
right. Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yep. Oof. And I was so now where in Colombia did you go to?
Cartagena.
That's right. You said Cartagena. My bad. Yeah. So you never been to Medellin yet, right?
No. Okay. I want to go to Medellin and Bogota because my cousin who works for an airline, he always travels over there. Yeah. And he says like that those 2 cities are probably better to hit as far as trying to meet people out there. So yeah, I definitely gotta revisit Colombia in a safer environment. Yes.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. So where I was like I was in Poblado, and this is before like Parque Yetis was like Parque Yetis like how it is now, but it was a really nice area. So like a lot of people like if they're going over there or near like Provenza, that's another nice area. Like typically people have money. Even the Colombians that go there have money. Right? So that shakedown was gonna be real. Yeah, it was about to get real for me, man. But thankfully, the owner looked out, so I gave the owner a nice tip, and I was like, "Man, thank you." And he was like, he gave me the head nod because he knew like it was about to go down, man.
Listen, have you ever been to Cali, Colombia?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I've been out there quite a few times. Hung out with Andre, love crossing borders. My homegirl tours by D. You know what I mean? So I went to see the Statue of Christ, Cristo Rey. Did the Afro-Colombian tour. Yeah, man. Of course, I've been to Cali. Man, went to the Salsa Club with Dre. Yes, absolutely, man. Cali, Colombia. Yeah. Now I have not been to Bogota yet, though. I haven't been to Bogota yet. That's on the horizon though. Bogota is definitely on the horizon. Yeah, man. But I'm sorry that Colombia was the worst country for you, and you got the shakedown, man.
Yeah, you really can't avoid stuff like that, especially when you're in a big group of Americans, and they know that it's a big group of Americans in a particular spot. So
right. Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Let me just jump in the chat before I continue the conversation. Greetings. I cannot read that word, but definitely salute to you, or name, sorry. Knowledge and relation.
Now where it go change like I'm famous.